There's a pattern in history that has created four unstoppable monopolies in the last 400 years. And right now in 2025, the tech giants are following that exact same pattern step by step, billion by billion, almost like they're reading from a playbook written by Dutch merchants in 1602. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company was granted a monopoly on Asian trade. They had 40 ships. Within 50 years, they had 150 ships, 50,000 employees, and a private army of 10,000 soldiers. They didn't just dominate trade. They were the government in Asia. In 1600, the British East India Company received its charter. By 1803, they controlled all of India. Not as traders, as rulers. They had their own military. They collected taxes. They were a state within a state. In 1870, John D. Rockefeller founded Standard Oil. By 1904, they controlled 91% of oil refining in America. They set prices. They crushed competitors. They bought politicians. The government had to break them up because they'd become more powerful than the government itself. In 2004, Facebook launched. By 2025, Meta has 3 billion users. They control what 40% of humanity sees every day. They shape elections. They influence governments. And they're too big to regulate. 4 times. 4 monopolies. 4 companies that became more powerful than nations. All following the exact same 4-stage pattern. And here's what should terrify you. Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, all in stage 3 or 4 of this pattern right now. They're not approaching monopoly. They are monopolies. This is the story of how companies capture governments, why they always claim they're just businesses, and why the math says tech giants are the new East India companies. And they're more powerful than any monopoly in history. Before we go through the pattern, you need to understand what monopoly power actually means. Not high market share sovereignty. A true monopoly doesn't just dominate a market. It becomes the market. It writes the rules. It controls the regulators. It owns the politicians. It operates above the law. Not because it's criminal, because it's too powerful to prosecute. The pattern for creating unbreakable monopoly follows 4 stages. Stage 1, Government Charter. The company receives official permission to operate exclusively in a market or region. The government grants monopoly rights. Why? Because the government benefits. Tax revenue. Political support. Sometimes direct bribes. The charter creates legal monopoly. Competitors are banned by law. Stage 2, Market Dominance. With legal protection from competition, the company grows exponentially. They undercut any illegal competitors. They expand vertically. They integrate supply chains. They control everything from production to distribution. Within a generation, they're the only game in town. Stage 3, Political Capture. The company is now so large that it can buy political influence. Campaign donations. Lobbying. Regulatory capture. They put their executives in government positions. Government puts former officials on the company's board. The line between company and state disappears. The company writes the laws that regulate it. Stage 4, Too big to fail. The company is now essential to the economy. Millions depend on it for jobs. The government depends on it for tax revenue. If it fails, the economy collapses. So the government protects it, bails it out, crushes its competitors. The monopoly is permanent, untouchable. And this pattern has created 4 massive monopolies across 6 centuries. Let me show you how it played out. Let's start with the first modern monopoly. The Dutch East India Company, VOC, 1602 to 1799. The company that became a state. In 1600, Dutch merchants were competing with each other for Asian trade. Multiple ships. Multiple companies. Competing for the same spice routes. The competition was inefficient. Ships undercut each other. Prices were unstable. Profits were inconsistent. The Dutch government, the States General, saw a solution. Consolidate. Stage 1, Government Charter. On March 20, 1602, the States General granted a charter to the Verenigde Oost-Indische Company, the United East India Company, the VOC. The charter gave the VOC exclusive rights to Dutch trade with Asia. No other Dutch company could operate there. The monopoly was absolute. But the charter granted more than trade rights. It granted sovereign powers. The VOC could sign treaties with foreign rulers. They could build forts. They could maintain armies. They could wage war. They could administer justice and execute criminals. The VOC wasn't just a company. It was a state. And the Dutch government did this deliberately. They couldn't afford to govern Asia directly. So they outsourced sovereignty to a corporation. The VOC would conquer and govern. The Dutch state would benefit from the profits and taxes. It was a public-private partnership. The state granted power. The company exercised it. Both profited. And the VOC used that power immediately. Stage 2: Market dominance. The VOC's first move was eliminating competition. Not Dutch competition, that was already banned. Foreign competition. The Portuguese controlled many spice-producing islands. The VOC attacked them. Naval battles. Sieges. By 1605, the VOC had captured Ambon from Portugal. By 1619, they'd established Batavia, modern Jakarta, as their headquarters. By 1621, they controlled the Banda Islands, the only source of nutmeg in the world. And here's what they did next. They created artificial scarcity. Nutmeg only grew on the Banda Islands. The VOC controlled the islands. They destroyed excess nutmeg trees to keep prices high. They massacred the native population when they resisted. Nearly 15,000 Bandanese were killed or enslaved. The survivors were forced to grow nutmeg exclusively for the VOC. This was monopoly through violence. Control the supply. Eliminate alternatives. Set the price. By 1650, the VOC controlled 50% of world trade between Europe and Asia. They had 150 ships, 50,000 employees, 10,000 soldiers. Revenue of 45 million guilders annually. That's 2.5 billion in today's money. They were the most valuable company on earth. Their stock was traded on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, the first modern stock exchange. At peak, the VOC's market value was 78 million guilders. That's about 8 trillion in today's money adjusted for economic size. Larger than Apple, Microsoft, and Google combined. And they paid dividends of 18% annually for decades. The VOC shareholders became the wealthiest people in Europe. All funded by monopoly. Stage 3: Political capture. The VOC didn't just influence Dutch politics. They were Dutch politics. The company's directors, the Heren 17, the Lords 17, were among the most powerful men in the Netherlands. They sat on city councils. They advised the States General. They financed political campaigns. And the revolving door was total. Government officials joined the VOC. VOC executives joined the government. The same families controlled both. The VOC wrote trade policy. They determined which nations the Netherlands would ally with or fight. They decided war and peace in Asia without consulting the Dutch government. Why? Because they had the power. The Dutch government had maybe 20 ships in Asian waters. The VOC had 150. The government had a few hundred soldiers in Asia. The VOC had 10,000. Who actually governed Asia? The VOC. And the Dutch government accepted this because they profited. The VOC paid huge taxes. They provided military power the government couldn't afford. And they kept spices flowing to Europe, enriching the Netherlands. This was regulatory capture perfected. The regulator and the regulated were the same entity. Stage 4: Too big to fail. By 1700, the VOC employed 70,000 people. 1 in 50 Dutch men worked for the VOC at some point. The company was the largest employer in the Netherlands. Tax revenue from the VOC was 30% of Dutch government income. If the VOC failed, the Dutch economy failed. So when the VOC started losing money in the 1700s, the government bailed them out. Repeatedly. The VOC had corruption problems. Employees were stealing. Management was incompetent. Competitors, the British, were taking market share. By 1780, the VOC was bankrupt. Debt of 110 million guilders. The company should have been dissolved. But the Dutch government couldn't allow it. Too many jobs. Too much tax revenue. Too much political power. So they nationalized it. In 1799, the VOC was formally dissolved. Assets were transferred to the Dutch government. The debts were assumed by the government. The monopoly ended. But only because the state absorbed it. The VOC didn't die. It merged with the government. The monopoly became official state policy. Let's jump forward 200 years. The British East India Company, EIC, 1600 to 1874. The company that conquered India. In 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted a charter to the Company of Merchants of London trading into the East Indies. The British East India Company. The charter gave them a 15-year monopoly on English trade with Asia. Stage 1, Government Charter. The EIC wasn't as powerful as the VOC initially. The Dutch dominated the spice trade. The British were secondary players. But the EIC found a different market. India. Textiles, silk, indigo, tea, opium. The EIC established trading posts in India. Bombay, Madras, Calcutta. They negotiated with local rulers for trading rights. They paid taxes to the Mughal Empire. They were merchants. Peaceful. Legal. But that changed in the 1750s. The Mughal Empire was collapsing. India was fragmenting into regional states. The EIC saw an opportunity. If they had military power, they could take territory, control production, eliminate middlemen, maximize profit. So they built an army. Stage 2, Market Dominance through Conquest. In 1757, Robert Clive, an EIC military officer, won the Battle of Plassey. 3,000 EIC soldiers defeated 50,000 Indian troops. How? Bribery. Clive bribed the Indian commander to betray his own side. The victory gave the EIC control of Bengal, the richest province in India. The EIC now collected taxes. They controlled 20 million people. They weren't a trading company anymore. They were a government. And they used that power to dominate trade. The EIC forced Indian farmers to grow opium. They exported it to China. The Chinese government banned opium. The EIC started the Opium Wars to force China to accept it. 2 wars. Hundreds of thousands dead. All to protect the EIC's drug trade monopoly. By 1803, the EIC controlled most of India. Not through trade. Through conquest. They had 200,000 soldiers. Twice the size of the British Army. They governed 200 million people. They collected £13 million in taxes annually. That's $2 billion in today's money. The EIC was the most powerful corporation in history. They had their own military, their own currency, their own legal system. They were a state. Stage 3, Political Capture. The EIC's control over British politics was total. They had a permanent lobby in Parliament. EIC executives sat in the House of Commons. They bribed MPs. They funded political campaigns. They wrote trade policy. The British government depended on the EIC. India was the jewel of the empire. The EIC governed it. The British government couldn't afford to take over. The cost would be enormous. So they let the EIC rule. The EIC paid dividends to shareholders. Many MPs were shareholders. They voted to protect their investment. The company wrote laws regulating itself. This was regulatory capture on a scale never seen before. A private company governing hundreds of millions of people with government approval. Stage 4, Too big to fail and nationalization. By 1850, the EIC was overextended. They'd conquered too much. Governed too many. Made too many enemies. In 1857, the Indian Rebellion. The EIC's Indian soldiers mutinied. Hundreds of thousands revolted. The EIC crushed the rebellion, but barely. The cost was enormous. The British government realized the EIC couldn't govern India anymore. The company was incompetent, corrupt, hated. But India couldn't be abandoned. Too valuable. Too strategic. So in 1858, the British government nationalized the EIC. The Government of India Act transferred all EIC territories, assets, and armies to the British Crown. The EIC was dissolved as a governing body. But they continued as a trading company until 1874. The monopoly ended. But only because the state took over. The EIC didn't fail. It was absorbed. The company's shareholders were compensated with government bonds. They lost nothing. The monopoly became official imperial policy. Let's jump forward 70 years. Standard Oil, 1870 to 1911. The company that owned America's energy. In 1870, John D. Rockefeller founded Standard Oil in Cleveland, Ohio. The oil industry was chaotic. Hundreds of small refineries. Wildcat drillers. Boom and bust. Prices were unstable. Rockefeller saw opportunity. Consolidate. Create order. Dominate. But he didn't get a government charter. America didn't grant monopolies. Not officially. So Rockefeller built monopoly differently. Through vertical integration and predatory pricing. Stage 1, the equivalent of government charter through regulatory failure. Standard Oil didn't need formal monopoly rights. The U.S. government wasn't regulating oil. There were no antitrust laws yet. The Sherman Antitrust Act wasn't passed until 1890. For 20 years, Rockefeller operated in a legal vacuum. He could do anything. And he did. Stage 2, market dominance through ruthless tactics. Rockefeller's strategy was simple. Control refining. In 1870, there were 250 oil refineries in America. Rockefeller owned 4% of capacity. His method: buy out competitors. He'd offer a fair price. If they refused, he'd undercut them. He had capital. They didn't. He could afford to sell at a loss temporarily. They couldn't. They'd go bankrupt. Then he'd buy their assets for pennies. By 1880, Standard Oil controlled 90% of U.S. refining. By 1904, 91%. But refining wasn't enough. He needed to control everything. He built pipelines, bought oil fields, created a transportation network, owned tank cars, controlled distribution, vertical integration. From well to consumer, Standard Oil owned every step. If you wanted kerosene for your lamp, you bought Standard Oil. There was no alternative. And here's the critical tactic: rebates. Rockefeller negotiated secret rebates with railroads. Standard Oil shipped so much oil that railroads gave them rebates. Not just on Standard Oil shipments. On competitor shipments too. Every time a competitor shipped oil, the railroad paid Standard Oil a percentage. Rockefeller was being paid to bankrupt his competitors. This was predatory capitalism. Legal. Unstoppable. Monopoly through efficiency and ruthlessness. Stage 3, political capture. By 1890, Standard Oil was so powerful that they controlled state legislatures. Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Rockefeller put allies in governors' mansions. Standard Oil wrote tax law. They wrote corporate law. New Jersey became a haven for trusts because Standard Oil lobbied for favorable incorporation laws. The company donated to both Republicans and Democrats. Whoever won, Standard Oil won. They employed 100,000 people by 1900. Those employees voted. Their families voted. Entire towns depended on Standard Oil. Politicians couldn't oppose them without losing elections. And Rockefeller pioneered corporate lobbying. He hired lawyers, public relations firms. He shaped public opinion. Standard Oil ran newspaper ads claiming they'd lowered kerosene prices. True. But they'd also destroyed competition and controlled supply. The public saw lower prices. They didn't see monopoly. And when journalists like Ida Tarbell exposed Standard Oil's tactics, Rockefeller attacked them. He called her a liar. He funded counterjournalism. He used every tool of influence to protect the monopoly. Stage 4: Too big to fail and force breakup. By 1900, the U.S. government realized Standard Oil was a threat. Not to the economy. To democracy. One man, Rockefeller, controlled America's energy. He influenced elections. He corrupted government. President Theodore Roosevelt launched antitrust prosecution. In 1911, the Supreme Court ruled Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly. They ordered breakup. Standard Oil was split into 34 companies. Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, all descendants of Standard Oil. Rockefeller's ownership stake in the divided companies made him the richest man in history. At breakup, his wealth was $900 million. That's $400 billion adjusted for inflation. More than Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. The monopoly was broken. But Rockefeller won anyway. Now let's look at the modern example. The tech giants, 2004 to 2025. Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft. This is the fourth test and they're in stage 3 right now. Stage 1, regulatory vacuum as modern charter. The tech companies didn't receive formal charters. But they had something better. Regulatory vacuum. The internet was new in the 1990s. Governments didn't understand it. Didn't regulate it. Tech companies could do anything. And they claimed they were just platforms. Not publishers. Not monopolies. Just neutral platforms connecting people. That was the lie. Google launched in 1998. By 2000, they dominated search. 50% market share. By 2010, 90%. By 2025, 92%. That's not competition. That's monopoly. But Google claimed they won through better product. Partially true. But they also had network effects. The more people used Google, the better the algorithm got. The better the algorithm, the more people used Google. A self-reinforcing monopoly. Facebook launched in 2004. By 2012, 1 billion users. By 2020, 3 billion across Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. 40% of humanity. They control what billions of people see every day. They shape elections. Multiple countries, US, UK, Philippines, have had elections influenced by Facebook's algorithm. That's not a platform. That's a publisher. A propagandist. But they claim neutrality. Amazon launched in 1994. By 2025, 50% of US e-commerce. They're not just a retailer. They're the marketplace. Third-party sellers must use Amazon. Amazon takes 30% to 50% commission. If sellers succeed, Amazon copies their product and undercuts them using data from their own platform. This is predatory. And legal. Because there's no regulatory framework. Apple's App Store. 30% commission on all sales. Developers have no alternative. If you want iPhone users, you pay Apple. Epic Games sued. They lost. The courts ruled Apple's monopoly is legal because it's their platform. Microsoft. They were broken up in 2000 for monopoly. Internet Explorer bundling. They adapted. Now they dominate cloud computing with Azure. They own LinkedIn. They own GitHub. They're back to monopoly. Different markets. Same pattern. Stage 2, market dominance through acquisition and integration. The tech giants don't just build. They buy. Facebook bought Instagram in 2012 for $1 billion. Instagram had 30 million users. Facebook had 900 million. Why buy Instagram? Because it was a threat. Young people were leaving Facebook for Instagram. So Zuckerberg bought the threat. Then Facebook bought WhatsApp in 2014 for $19 billion. Why? Because messaging was shifting. WhatsApp had 450 million users. Could become competitor. Buy it. Neutralize it. Google bought YouTube in 2006 for $1.65 billion. YouTube was becoming the video platform. Could compete with Google for attention. Buy it. Integrate it. Now YouTube is Google's second largest revenue source. 30 billion annually. Amazon bought Whole Foods in 2017 for 13.7 billion. Why? Because Amazon was moving into physical retail. Buying an established chain gives instant infrastructure. Over 500 stores. And it gave Amazon grocery data. What people buy. When. How much. That data feeds the algorithm. Makes Amazon smarter. More dominant. This is horizontal integration. Buy your competitors before they become threats. The FTC is supposed to prevent this. They don't. Why? Stage 3. Political capture. The tech giants spend more on lobbying than any industry. In 2022, Amazon spent $21 million on lobbying. Google $13 million. Meta $20 million. Apple $9 million. Microsoft $10 million. Combined, $73 million. That's more than oil companies. More than banks. And it's not just lobbying. It's the revolving door. Former FTC commissioners work for tech companies. Former tech executives join the FTC. The line between regulator and regulated is gone. Example, Lina Khan. She wrote a paper in law school. Amazon's antitrust paradox. She argued Amazon is a monopoly that harms competition. She became FTC chair in 2021. She's trying to break up Amazon. But Congress is blocking her. Why? Because Amazon donates to half of Congress. Amazon employs 1.5 million people. Those employees vote. Their families vote. Politicians can't oppose Amazon without losing elections. And the tech giants shape elections directly. Facebook's algorithm determines what news you see. If Facebook wants a candidate to win, they boost positive content. Suppress negative. In 2016, Facebook was accused of helping Trump win. In 2020, accused of helping Biden. Both sides claim bias. Both are partially right. Because Facebook's algorithm is partisan. Not by design. By engagement. Divisive content gets more engagement. Facebook amplifies it. The result, polarization. Extremism. And Facebook profits from engagement regardless of political outcome. Google search results influence voter opinion. Google has been accused of biasing search results toward Democrats. Multiple studies show liberal bias in search results. Google denies it. But the algorithm is proprietary. Nobody can verify. We just trust Google. That's power. Apple's privacy policies harm Facebook's ad business. Facebook complained. Apple didn't care. They have more power. They control the iPhone. Facebook needs iPhone users. Apple doesn't need Facebook. This is monopoly fighting monopoly. The government isn't even involved. The companies are more powerful than regulators. Stage 4, too big to fail. We're here now. 2025. The tech giants are systemically important. Amazon handles 50% of e-commerce. If Amazon crashes, the retail economy crashes. Google handles 92% of search. If Google goes down, the internet is unusable for billions. Facebook has 3 billion users. If Facebook shuts down, how do billions communicate? WhatsApp is the primary communication tool in 100 countries. Apple. Microsoft. Same story. Their infrastructure. Essential infrastructure. Privately owned. And governments know this. When Congress holds hearings on tech monopolies, nothing happens. Zuckerberg testifies. Bezos testifies. They apologize for problems. Promise reform. Nothing changes. Why? Because breaking them up would crash the economy. Millions of jobs. Trillions in market value. Pension funds hold their stock. If tech giants crash, retirees lose savings. Politicians can't allow it. So the monopolies are permanent. But here's what's different from previous monopolies. The VOC and EIC governed territories. Standard Oil controlled energy. Those were physical monopolies. Limited by geography. The tech giants control information. Unlimited by geography. They govern your mind. They determine what you see, what you believe, what you buy, who you vote for. And they're global. The VUC operated in Asia, the EIC in India, Standard Oil in America. Google operates everywhere. Facebook everywhere. Amazon everywhere. Their monopoly is planetary. And they have AI now. Google's algorithm decides what websites rank, what businesses succeed or fail. Facebook's algorithm decides what news spreads, what movements organize. Amazon's algorithm decides what products sell, what sellers survive. These aren't just companies. They're gatekeepers. They control access to markets, access to information, access to people, and they're unaccountable. You can't vote them out. You can't regulate them effectively. You can't compete with them. They have network effects. They have data. They have scale. You have none of that. And here's the mechanism that makes them unstoppable. Regulatory capture is complete. The people regulating tech giants don't understand technology. Congress held hearings where senators asked Zuckerberg how Facebook makes money if it's free. He had to explain advertising. These are the people supposed to regulate Facebook. They don't understand the business model. How can they regulate it? And the tech giants know this. They use complexity as defense. Their algorithms are proprietary. Their data is secret. Their operations are opaque. Regulators can't see inside. Can't understand what they're seeing. Can't regulate what they don't understand. This is monopoly through obfuscation. Let me show you the exact parallels. VOC 1602. Government charter granting monopoly. Sovereign powers. Private army. 200 years of dominance. Ended only by nationalization. EIC 1600. Government charter granting monopoly. Private army. Conquered India. 250 years of dominance. Ended only by nationalization. Standard Oil 1870. Regulatory vacuum enabling monopoly. Vertical integration. Political capture. 41 years of dominance. Ended only by Supreme Court forced breakup. Tech giants, 1998 to 2004. Regulatory vacuum enabling monopoly. Network effects. Data advantage. Political capture through lobbying. 25 plus years of dominance so far. No end in sight. The pattern is identical. The mechanism is identical. And the outcome will be identical. These companies will not be broken up voluntarily. They will not regulate themselves. They will not stop growing. They will continue until they're forced to stop. By government action. Or by collapse. And collapse is unlikely. They're too big to fail. So the only question is when government acts. And governments won't act until the monopolies threaten government itself. The VOC threatened Dutch sovereignty by becoming too independent. The government nationalized. The EIC threatened British control of India by being incompetent. The government nationalized. Standard Oil threatened American democracy by corrupting politics. The government broke it up. The tech giants? They don't threaten government yet. They enhance government power. Surveillance. Data collection. Control of information. Governments use tech giants for their own purposes. China uses tech companies for social credit. America uses them for surveillance. Europe uses them for tax revenue. As long as tech giants serve government interests, they'll be protected. But here's what will eventually trigger action. When tech giants become more powerful than governments. When they can defy government directly. That's the line. And we're approaching it. Apple defied the FBI in 2016. Refused to unlock a terrorist's iPhone. Apple won. Facebook defied Australia in 2021. Blocked news over a content payment law. Australia backed down. Google threatened to leave Australia over the same law. Australia compromised. This is corporations defying nations. And winning. When that becomes common, governments will act. Not to protect people. To protect their own power. And the breakup will come. But not soon. We're in stage 4. too big to fail. The next stage, stage 5, is too powerful to tolerate. That comes when a tech giant directly defies the US government on a major issue and wins. Then the breakup begins. Until then, the monopolies continue. Growing, consolidating, capturing more markets, more data, more power. 4 times in 6 centuries. 4 monopolies. 4 companies that became more powerful than nations. VOC, EIC, Standard Oil, tech giants. All following the exact same 4-stage pattern. Government charter or regulatory vacuum. Market dominance through acquisition and integration. Political capture through lobbying and revolving door. Too big to fail protection by government. And right now in 2025, the tech giants are in stage 4 approaching stage 5. They control information. They influence elections. They dominate markets. They own the infrastructure of modern life. And they're unbreakable. Not through competition. Not through regulation. Not through choice. The monopolies are permanent until they threaten government power directly. And when they do, the government won't break them up to help you. They'll break them up to save themselves. The question isn't if the tech giants are monopolies. They are. The question is when they become too powerful for even governments to tolerate, and what happens to the rest of us while we wait.